Join me as I transform this garden centre Cornus and start it on its journey to becoming a stunning little bonsai tree. Follow the process and see how you too can create a beautiful bonsai tree from garden centre material. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what to do, how that will affect your tree, and how that will give you an amazing starter bonsai tree. Let's go. Cornus, often known as dogwood, is a vigorous growing multi-stem plant, often grown in borders and as hedges. Gardeners will often crop it back hard each season, almost to the ground, to encourage more stems to sprout out. It has strappy, elongated leaves, but its real beauty is in its winter image, with stunning vivid colours, reds, yellows and oranges on new growth. I found this tree in my local garden centre and was immediately drawn to it because of its thick central trunk. The branching can be cut away and developed over a number of growing seasons, but the trunk is quite literally the base on which the rest of the tree is built. Thicker trunks can take years to develop, but starting with a thick trunk will instantly give a more mature looking bonsai tree. Often in bonsai there is a process which we can follow, particularly with new or starter trees, and that starts with getting the thing out of the pot and having a look at the roots. And the reason for that is that every bonsai has an ideal front or ideal viewing position, and the reason for that is that sometimes there may be some feature in the roots or a nice nebari or root spread which dictates which is the best side of the tree. So the first thing we need to do is get this out of the pot, take a look at the roots, and also in looking at the roots we need to think about the fact that at some point this is going to go into a more shallow pot. Now, because we're moving into spring, it's also the ideal time for doing root work on plants, because those roots will recover well before the plant comes into leaf and starts transpiring and needing those roots to develop and grow to take up more water for the tree. So we're going to get this out of the pot, have a look at the roots, and in all likelihood reduce the size of the root ball quite significantly. I'm just loosening the soil on the top of the root mass here, and what I'm looking for is to establish where those roots are entering the soil and seeing whether we've got any roots which are forming a nebari or a nice root spread at the point at which the plant goes into the soil. Now it looks like we do have some here. A nice nebari or surface root spread is desirable in bonsai trees because it quite literally anchors the tree into the soil and gives the impression of an aged tree. Now there's an awful lot of soil on here, so it's going to take me a while to remove a lot of this and get a sense of what's going on with the roots. I'm then also, once I see where the roots are at the top here, potentially going to remove maybe half of this to give a shallower root ball. You can see there are an awful lot of roots in here, so I need to tease all those out, lose a lot of this soil, and then I'll have a better idea what we've got in terms of roots. So I've now removed possibly 2/3 of the root ball on there, and what I've discovered is that the roots themselves are all these really fine roots, which is exactly what we want for a bonsai tree. These fine roots are what we call feeder roots, and we want those rather than the thicker roots. I've trimmed off some thick roots underneath, so we've now got a much shallower root ball, What I'm going to do is I'm just going to sit that in a basket, secure that in the basket, and add some soil to that, some bonsai soil, which is a gritty, free draining soil, which will encourage those roots to grow. And then once that's secured in the basket, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim away, look at the structure of the tree and make decisions as to which bits need to go, which bits will feature in a future design. I'm a big fan of these perforated baskets. They're great for growing developing trees because the perforations allow a lot of aeration to the roots all the way around. This basket I picked up from the hardware section of the local garden centre for just a couple of pounds. And if you can get your hands on something like this for developing your bonsai trees in training or development, then I think it's a real must. What I need to do now is get some bonsai soil into here and sit the tree into it, and then I can look at styling the tree and removing some of the canopy. Before I can sit the tree or put any soil in there, I just need to add some tie down wires to the basket, and this will just hold the tree in place whilst the roots are developing and ensure it doesn't move about too much. The soil I'm putting this in initially is predominantly molar clay with a little bit of perlite mixed in there. Because it's a tree in development, there's no point putting it into an expensive bonsai soil mix. I'm just mounding that up in the middle, and I'm going to place the tree and settle that into there. And then secure the tie down wires around that before just topping the basket up with more soil. So I've put the wires up and round the trunk, and I'm just pulling taut on that and twisting that just so that there's some tension in the wire to hold that tree in the pot. And I've got 2 more wires that I need to put over the other side of the tree, and that should hold it firmly. Just bring those together. And then with my pliers, just get a hold of those, pull them taut and twist. I'm not worrying too much about the position or orientation of the tree just at the moment. What I'm going to do is let that settle and recover in the basket, but I am going to do a little bit of judicious pruning. But before I do that, I just need to fill the remainder of that basket with soil and just make sure those roots are covered. And there we go, roots all nicely covered up. Plenty of soil for those to develop into. So here's the tree in its new temporary home. And because we know that Cornus is a very vigorous plant and puts out lots of growth, particularly from where it's been cut, the plan is to go in quite hard on this. There are some regular pruning rules when it comes to setting up and establishing bonsai, such as cutting branches which are growing straight up, straight down, removing any dead foliage where you've got multiple branches coming out from one point. The first thing I see on here is that there is a thick trunk coming through here, and it's going to make the tree look a little bit out of proportion. It's quite a long length of growth with not a lot going on. It's quite a long straight piece, and it's quite thick in comparison to some of the other branches around it in here. So I am in fact going to remove that. So I'm coming in with my tools. So I'm going to make a rough cut on there first, just to get that out of the way, and then I'll come in and tidy that up. And there we go, that's quite a big piece removed there. And it's left quite a nasty stump on the back there. I'm going to come in there and I'm going to just nibble away and tidy that up a bit now. It's now easier to get to without that branch in the way. Ideally, when you're developing new bonsai material, you want to be trying to preserve thin branches on the trunk and removing the larger ones which look out of proportion. By keeping the smaller branches, we've got a thick trunk with smaller, thinner branches developing on there. That looks more like the image of a large tree in nature. So I'm just biting away, trying to remove and tidy up this stump. And this should heal up fairly quickly. Cornus is a fast growing tree and very vigorous. So I've removed that. I will still tidy that up a little bit more. As I come around the tree, I can see that I've got a number of branches here emerging from the same spot on the trunk. Now that's undesirable, so I'm just going to come in and remove those. And so the main thing now with this is, in order to create the image of a small Shohin tree, I want to bring these branches in quite a lot. So I'm going to take off a lot of the length of these. And I know that because it's Cornus, it will grow back really quite rapidly and vigorously from these cuts. And although it looks a little bit radical now, we will see the benefits of this fairly quickly. So I've got another quite thick trunk here, and I'm just going to take that off at that point, trim a lot of this growth back. And when Cornus grows, it grows and it has buds in pairs along the branch. And if I trim those back to just after those pairs of buds, that will encourage those buds to ramify and become a pair of new branches at that point, which is exactly what we want in order to develop a bushy or twiggy looking tree. So you might think that that doesn't look like a great deal at this moment in time, and you'd probably be right. But bear in mind that bonsai is a multi-seasonal practice, and that we're looking at how this tree will look not just this season, but next season, the season after that, and so on. And the main thing is that we've got a thick trunk here, and we can cut off the canopy and the branches on that, and we can regrow those in quite a short period of time, and in a period of perhaps 2 or 3 seasons. Hopefully this will be a nice little Shohin tree with the starts of some nice ramification developing on there. Let me have your thoughts in the comments below. Have you worked on Cornus? And what results did you have? Just one final note, because Cornus is such a vigorous plant, I expect if I was to stick any of these cuttings into the soil, they would root and give me several more trees to work with. Over the next few seasons it will be meticulously trimmed to increase the ramification or twigginess, pruning back to the first 2 buds in any emerging branch to encourage subdivision and increased branching in the smallest possible space. This will help create the image of a much larger tree but retain the small size. It's a bit of a cliche, but remember that bonsai development is a marathon and not a sprint. I aim to build the canopy and increased ramification or twigginess over the next couple of growing seasons, and continue with root pruning to develop a flatter, more radial root spread of feeder roots, so it will fit into a shallow bonsai pot. Be sure to subscribe for updates on this tree and see its future progress. If you want to see more examples of developing bonsai from inexperienced garden centre material, you should check out this video next.